So I just think like there's so much to be had in just encountering God and talking to God about, even if we don't have a friend or we want a person, really going to him because he does care about these details of our lives.
Today we're talking about friendships with two incredible ladies, Tracy Brester and Courtney Lockridge. You are in for a treat when you hear about how they have navigated their beautiful friendship, how they are helping other women establish deep friendships through an incredible organization and the retreat experience called Revel. So stay tuned and join us for our threesome conversation that will, I know, encourage your heart today. And thanks for being here. Welcome to the Generous Girl podcast. Today, I am joined with two guests, and it's a lot of fun when we have a threesome conversation. I have Tracy with me, and I have Courtney. And Tracy is a wife and a mother of four and a relentless pursuer of what we call thin place moments, which she will explain. But it's also, think of it as where the divine meets the ordinary. She's a lover of live music and words and spontaneous road trips and loves being in ministry with women. And she is also the director of Revel. And it's a ministry where you go on a retreat and you come alongside women who want to take a deep breath full of Jesus and create the space for them to hear his voice. And she's a mom and is amazing. And her dear friend Courtney is with her. And Courtney is a life and business coach. She's an entrepreneur and cheerleader at heart. And she's on a mission also to help women to do life beautifully, one intentional decision at a time. And she's passionate about living a deeply satisfying life, both at home and in the workplace. And Courtney was actually my small group leader when I was a part of the Revel experience. So welcome, Courtney and Tracy.
Yeah, hi. Excited to be here.
So excited. So you're both, I'm guessing, in Nebraska today.
We are.
Yes. And what I love about your situation is you share a driveway. Like, could there be anything better than sharing a driveway with a really good friend? I can't think of one.
Yeah. I could probably go outside and like wave at her right now.
I love that.
I'm only worried she can hear me hollering at my kids. So.
Right. Oh, that's so great. So great. Well, so much to unpack during this podcast. And what we're going to talk about today is faith and friendships. And the friendship component is obviously a part of this ministry Revel that we will explain and is amazing. But it's also just so important to the three of us having women friends and just friendships that encourage us to take the next step and be all that God made us to be and call out the hard things and be there as the encourager. And I think the two of you have a beautiful friendship and have weathered through things and have not been afraid to have the hard conversations, which has kept your, friendship so open and transparent. So I think it would be great let's just start with, how did you both meet each other?
You want me to take this? Okay. So fun fact, I'm about 4.5 years older than Courtney. And that plays into this because we both started dating the men that we would eventually marry at the same time. But Courtney was still in high school. I did not know that. So we went on a double date because our husbands were friends at the university. And we went on a double date to see The Wedding Singer. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that movie, but it's set in the 80s. So it has a lot of 80s music. And I sat next to Courtney, and she is so fun. I mean, Courtney is so fun. And she's a talker, and she's tons of energy. And I'm like, oh, I like this girl, Dave, So we're walking out of the theater, and I was flipping out over the music. I'm a big music fan, particularly 80s music. It's when I grew up. And so I kept saying to her, I think during the movie, I would hit her and be like, oh my gosh, such a great song. And she'd just smile. We're walking out, and she says, I was like, oh my gosh, the music in that movie was so great, wasn't it? And she kind of she's like, honestly, I didn't know any of it. And I was like, wait a minute. You didn't know any of it? And she's like, not really. And so we got in the car, and I looked at Chris, I go, how old is she? Anyways, I would say, that was the start of it. But I fell in love with her in that theater. Yes. Such great energy. And that was, good grief, Court, 27 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yes.
27, 20.
friends for a long time, and we credit our men as introducing us to each other. So you don't see
Aw.
that very often.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then tell the listener your life stage with how old are your kids and how long have you had these houses that are right next to each other?
Mm-hmm.
Your turn.
Okay, so my daughter's a freshman in college. My son is a freshman in high school. And then my third child is in 6th grade. So I'm loving that I have my baby still, but he's growing up too fast. And then we have lived by each other and shared a driveway for 12, 11 years, maybe.
No, I think I've been out here 8. You've been out here that long.
Yeah. Okay. So 8. So see, we've lost track.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And how about you, Tracy?
So I have 4 kids. My oldest is a sophomore at the university, moved out. And I have a senior in high school, boy, another daughter who's a sophomore in high school, 16, and a son who is a freshman. I'm very good friends with her freshman.
Oh, of course. Oh,
Yeah.
that is so great. And those seasons are, like you said, Courtney, they do grow up so fast. And when we were having our pre-conversation, you were talking about when your daughter went away to college and how that was kind of an unexpected time for you with how you emotionally felt about that time. So how about if you share with the listener as a mom what that felt like, launching your oldest child?
Yes. Everybody said, picture how it's going to feel to leave her at college. And so I had gotten there, but I was very naive because I didn't think about what it would be like coming home. So I had prepared myself to say goodbye at college, but then I had not prepared myself emotionally for what that would actually feel like being at home without her. And I had a really hard time, and I very much have really encouraged her to be independent. And her senior year, she really made a lot of her own decisions while still here under our roof, and we were for that. And but even then, coming home and adjusting was very difficult. And I shared that with a friend and mentor of mine, and she said, "You're grieving." And I said, "Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense." And it kind of just gave me that permission to really be sad and recognize that a change had happened, a shift had happened in our family. And I'm an Enneagram 7, so I always reframe everything very positively. And I don't like to feel the sadness, but when somebody that I care about said, "You're grieving, you're situationally grieving," that really helped. And so lots of transition in our family this last year.
I think transition is such a part of being a mother, but you're never getting the manual that says, okay, tomorrow is the new chapter. Like it just kind of happens. And then, like when your last little one is finished with diapers, there's never this celebration and you recognize it. You're kind of looking back and you're going, wow, we finished that. And now, wow, she's no longer under our roof and she's in college, and we anticipate those times, but those emotions of even, the last baby and the first one going away. When my oldest, she finished high school in California in 3 years. She was kind of an old soul and just sort of ready for something else. And so read this book called The New Global Student that my mom had recommended. And she found this program, Rotary International, that she could go to Spain and do her senior year in high school in Spain. So graduate, with her SATs and grades in California, and then go there and apply to colleges. So she'd be in the same, age group as her peers, but kind of like the grades in Spain didn't matter. It was like a gap year, basically. So for us, it was like a whole year earlier than normal saying goodbye to her. And when we took her to LAX early in the morning and there was a pillow in the car, and I just cried on that pillow, on the drive back. And I was like so excited for her to have this experience in Spain. but not also anticipating my emotions. But then a year later, when she went away to college in LA, which was only, 45 minutes from where we lived, it felt like, oh, we got this. This is easy. We've already done, the overseas thing. So yeah, it's just, God is always, we're always being stretched and always having to readjust, I think, and recalibrate in those situations. And so, and for you, Tracy, you have a daughter in college also, and then a son who's a senior in high school, and navigating what are those next steps? What are we going to do? And it's never super easy or clear.
It's
sometimes.
Never easy. In fact, I think it gets harder the older they get. I'm finally realizing that.
You hear that. They're right.
You do. Yeah. But good too. It's that whole the Psalms holding joy and sorrow at the same time. Like what Courtney was saying, you want so bad. You're so excited for them. You prepare them to launch.
Right.
But then also, like I said, grieving the closing door. It's a door closing. You know? And that's okay. And it's good, but it can be sad too.
Exactly. And it's good to recognize the sadness, grieve. And like Courtney, you had said, okay, I'll be ready by Labor Day in our pre-conversation.
Yes, yeah. The timeline, like I had to tell all the men in my home, okay, I'm going to be pretty sad until Labor Day. So
let me be.
Let me be.
Exactly. Yeah. Communicating also, right? Communicating with your family. Like, hey, I'm not quite myself right now. And this is why.
Right.
Because sometimes I think as women, we don't communicate and then kind of build up that resentment. So instead I said, hey, I'm not going to be as happy-peppy and loving and my normal cheerleader self for a few weeks. Because I'm kind of, I'm in the gutter right now. I'm sad. I'm change. There's a change in our life and I'm grieving it.
Yeah. And helping to set expectations for yourself and everybody around you.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this ministry that we referenced at the beginning, Revel, and how that came about. I mentioned in your bio, Tracy, thin places. It's women friendships. It's also men friendships in that component of the ministry. But I think that would be wonderful to tell people what Revel is all about.
Sure. Love talking about Revel. So Revel was born in 2020. But Revel is an extension of a larger ministry called Harbor Ministries. And it was for men first. So they, I think, are 16 years old at this point. It really was birthed out of Tim Bulke, who's been in ministry his entire life, getting to a place where he started to see and recognize leaders who don't develop healthy rhythms with Jesus, not being able to stay the course in ministry. So, it's heavy lifting. Leadership is heavy lifting. And, somebody told me recently that the winds blow hardest at the top. So, anyway, so it was birthed for men. And the mission statement is to take 20 leaders at a time to learn what it looks like to live with rhythm, leave a legacy, and finish well in your leadership journey. So whatever God's calling you to in that season, what does it look like? Not you have to live with rhythm in order to leave a legacy and finish well. So my husband attended that back in, I think, 2014, so did Courtney's. And we own a business here in Lincoln. And so much happened between the Lord and my husband on that very first year that I was like, you're not supposed to share a lot of the details of what happens. But when he came back, and just his mindset as a business owner, even, and that in and of itself is a ministry.
Yes.
And what that would look like. We're in construction. And so that's construction. The construction industry can bleed you dry if you let it, time-wise, emotionally, mentally. And so he had grown up in that and was like, God, this has to look different. I want a different legacy. I want this business to look different than the norm. Everything just shifted. And so I, at the time, was not what I would say women's ministry at the time felt, what I was involved in felt a little bit false or like masks. Women are really good at putting a good face forward, but maybe not being super raw and authentic about what's going on for them. And I was longing for authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I heard was my husband, these guys going out and really getting raw with God on the mountain. And I thought, man, I want that, whatever that is. And dang it, they don't have it for girls. Fast forward to Tim approaching me at an event. And I was like, when are you doing this for girls? I want to go. And he's like, well, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And after a lot of wrestle between the Lord and myself, where we dealt with my own shame and fear of failure and all the things that I'm not good at, that he was finally like, Tracy, this actually isn't about you. And you said, Lord, I want to know what's next. I want to step out of the boat. I want to follow you on the ocean. I've invited you. Are you coming or are you not? And so out of that, Revel was born. So, and it's been incredible. It's 20 women at a time from all over the country. I mean, Kim, you've been, and total strangers, 1 year in the mountains, 1 year at the beach. And it's designed, Courtney's on the leadership team. She was part of really the birth of this whole thing, and everything that happens there. It's designed to set the stage and get out of the way. Like, it is God's show, 100%. But man, you get alone with him and start to learn what it looks like to have healthy rhythms and be introduced to different types of rhythms of listening to Jesus. It changes everything. And when it becomes a rhythm, we like to say, like, Jesus, he'll feed 5,000. What's the first thing he did? He goes away with his Father, right? And is alone with him. And then that's where you get filled up to be able to leave a legacy and finish well. So that's who we are.
So well said. And then to think of yourself as a boat in that safe harbor, recharging, just allowing the sails to calm down and rest until he launches you out of that harbor again. I just love that picture as well.
Yes. Yeah, you have to. The harbor is not a suggestion. It is utterly necessary. Yeah.
Yes, right. Exactly. And then Courtney, talk a little bit about what it's like to be a small group leader during the time together. Because it's usually, isn't it like a Tuesday night till Friday morning-ish, 2.5 days, 3 days?
Different every year, but it's 4 days-ish total. 2 full days,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such an honor to be a small group leader because these women are coming, they're taking a risk. Most of them don't know anyone there. And so they're coming and they're ready to really get real and raw and honest with themselves and with others. And so just in an atmosphere, we create an atmosphere that people really feel safe to share and hold space for their stories. So many women don't necessarily have someone that can hold their story with them. We all know there's places to get fixed, right? Counseling and some of those tools are great, but to really sit with someone in their year, right? That we unpack together is just a really special gift. And it's an honor to be able to hold their stories with them.
And it is lonely at the top, and these leaders feel lonely. There is no one safe where they live to share with. So it is that trusted group of women, trusted small group leader that invites them into that space. And like you said, being real with themselves as well as with this new group of women and a variety of ages, right? Like 20s, 70s, doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things. I think the guys divide kind of into 2 groups. You've got the 25 to 35s and then 35 and up. And I actually really love the beauty of Revel. I think our last group, I think we were as young as 24 and 72.
So good.
And it is so beautiful. So much richness. Yeah.
Yes. And I like it too, because you go away on this retreat and then it's not until the next year you go away on the next one. So not a big commitment, if any, during the year. So it's sort of like a one, carve out this time this year and then carve out that time next year. But it's so neat to get back together, see what the Lord has done in each woman's life. And you stay in that same small group, which is special too. Well, so good. Well, so tell people how to access the website if they're interested. Sure.
Yeah. So our website is reveljourney.org. You can get on there. It's not going to give you a ton of information. That is on purpose. Like Courtney mentioned, that there is risk involved. So if God is calling you, if some of those words have resonated with you, I would get on the website, look at it, apply. We launch currently just one group a year. Want to be really intentional with the 20 that we have each time. So, but it's important to get your application in so that you're in the kind of lineup. And yeah, we love it.
Well, I got to know about it because my husband also had gone through it, and then said, "Oh, there's a women's group." So it's fun to watch these different groups emerging throughout the country to help women have that community. And what I also want to segue here to talk about is just the overall umbrella of friendship with the two of you, because I think what you share is so unique and rare in many ways, that you live, right next to each other. And a lot of women don't have a good friend like that. Maybe God has moved them to a place that's, a city they've never lived in, their family's not there, and they're being obedient to what God is calling them to do, but they left their college friend somewhere else, or it's just a challenging time, or you're at home with the baby and the baby can't give you that community and connection like the girlfriend can in the same way. So let's just talk about how you have created this friendship. And I'm sure it hasn't been without its bumps and, having to work things out if you have miscommunications, but let's share with the listener a little bit about how you became such good friends.
You go.
Well, I would say, obviously, like any friendship, it starts, you invite, hey, bring your kids over. But yeah, being friends for, what did you say, Trace, 27?
I think it's 27. Yeah.
Yeah. Tracy was my personal attendant in my wedding. And yes, so, I just think one of the things that I think is really important to share is, for us to have longevity in friendship, we really allowed each other to change and grow. And I think that's so huge in friendship, really having different seasons of life and not expecting the same friend necessarily that was there 10 years ago, or that our friendship looks the same as it did 20 years ago.
Right.
I think really giving each other permission to change and grow, and then, but still being there for each other, has really allowed us to have longevity in our friendship. What would you add to that, Trace?
Yeah, I think we've gone through such seasons. When we first met, we were super young and newly married, and everything was fun and new, and you could just go to dinner for cheap on a Friday night at somebody's house, or and then life happens, and jobs change, or you start having kids, and then more kids, and then more kids, and then more kids, and maybe your kids don't get along. Ours do, but there's these different seasons in life, I think, that really can affect women's friendships.
Parenting philosophies too. Sometimes that can, that can really come into play.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that is so true. Yeah. And I think, we were talking about before, I want to be really careful with the subject of friendship, because I know myself have been really hurt and burned by other friendships in the past. And I have in turn also burned other people. So I want to honor that this can be kind of a hard conversation. But what I enjoy about this conversation being specifically with Courtney and the longevity is that it wasn't always easy. Like, we've had to have conversations. I'm not one, she mentioned being a 7. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. Not a big proponent of confrontations in our conversations. And so one of the things Courtney mentioned that I think has been key is giving each other grace and space for the season we're in and the growing we're doing. She said to me years ago, I'm going to quote somebody that I'm going to misquote something here. So Court, maybe if you remember who said this or whatever. But she told me one time, like, everybody has a certain amount of energy to give, right? Seasonally, it's different. Depends on what's going on in your world as to how much you have to give. And that was such an important piece of information for me as a friend, because I was the token people pleaser until I hit 40. But that the idea of people pleasing, that was also in order to keep friendships, to have people like me, which actually is a pretty selfish thing if you think about it. So, but Courtney growing herself and then watching me gave me the space and grace to be like, hey, you only have this much energy to give. Where are you putting the energy? So I think so much about longevity and friendship is about grace. So much of it is stepping out of your own shoes and maybe your own frustrations or hurt and looking at that person who you love and you've put work, that you've done work with, and being like, okay, something's going on here. I can ask her about it, but how do I show up for her in this particular season, and just giving grace.
And believing the best, I think, too, is so
best.
key.
Court says that all the time. Yep.
Yeah.
You'll
rarely regret believing the best.
Yeah.
Kind of giving that person the benefit of the doubt and not assuming the worst, and taking, that mindset. Because then it's grace-filled. Absolutely. And I like that line you said about, each person has a certain amount of energy to give. And in a similar way, like relationships, say, with parents and what they can give in a different way, it's like, from how they were raised, they also have a certain amount they can give, and the expectations have to be tempered and measured with what they're able to give based on how they were raised. And when we expect more to be given energy wise than is possible, then we're the ones who have to figure out, okay, wait, I need to realign my expectations because the person doesn't have any more energy to give, kind of thing.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Well, share that journal entry and the context, because I thought that was a neat thing
as we were talking
about
ahead of time and kind of preparing for the podcast, I was not preparing for the podcast. This was just this weekend. And I was going back in my journal because I didn't really feel like journaling that morning. And so felt like the Lord was leading me to kind of go back and remember some things. And I landed on this entry from December of 2017. And I was actually reading the book Thin Places by Tim Bulke. And there was a prompting question that was, who are key people who have impacted my life? So I started going down this list and I got to Courtney. And so I was reading it. She'd never heard it before. And it was so fun to reread because it is so true who we have been, particularly in 27 years. And I say, Courtney, she has taught me the worth of longevity and friendship, not walking away in the hard, drive, passion, honesty. She has inspired me to go into the wind and struggle with God and choose God at the same time. The power of words, and that it is okay to say the hard thing. What it looks like to choose each other in friendship and be iron that sharpens iron. And what I hear in that, and the history of Courtney and Tracy, it's iron that sharpens iron, but it's also, that can sound kind of gritty, right? And our friendship we've had moments of gritty, but it's also like surrounded with this gentle beauty. It all, you know what I mean? I can trust her. I can trust when she says good things to me, and I can trust when she says hard things to me, that they're in my best interest.
Right.
And that takes a long time. Right. So yeah, I think, I think that's a great indicator of, and it hasn't been pretty all the time, So I remember, Courtney, I'm going to share a story. I remember years ago, her youngest was real little. And I was very much sensing that Courtney was frustrated with me. You know how you know. And
if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. And so I reached out, and that was terrifying to me as someone who doesn't like confrontation, that maybe there was something she needed to say to me that was hard, and I would have to be okay hearing it. But I cared about her and our friendship enough to risk that. And I texted her and said, hey, I feel like maybe you're frustrated with me right now. I'm here. If you want to talk about it, I'd like to hear about it. And she texted me back, I'll call you when I put Griffin down for a nap. And it was a great conversation. And I had to hear some hard things, but I knew she was still choosing me. She wasn't it wasn't
Avoiding.
unreasonable.
Mhm.
She wasn't,
Mhm.
coming down on me because she'd had a hard day. Like it was fruitful. It was iron
Mhm.
sharpening iron. And
Mhm.
that feels different when you trust somebody.
Mhm.
So yeah, Griffin would have been really little. So that was a long time ago.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I didn't even
Anything
know
you
which,
want to add
I
to
didn't even
that,
know which
Courtney?
story you were going to share because,
Is that you?
I think I would love to share a little story too. And thanks for sharing that, Trace. That's really sweet. And I would agree. It's, it's a lot easier, right, to kind of like shut the door and move on to the next friend. But I think like pressing in like that, pressing in is really worth it. And, I think too, not a couple summers ago, I don't even think I've told you this either, but I do think there's something for the listeners here too, because we can put a lot of expectation on friends in our life to really meet a need we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a balance, right? And I think it's really saying, okay, God, like what is a reasonable expectation in friendship? And a couple summers ago, I remember Tracy was going through her own hard thing, and I was going through my own hard thing. It was kind of like a crash of both of us having really bad summers.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine.
Really bad summers. Okay, so it's like your person isn't available,
right?
And your person isn't available because they both have their poop storm going on, right? And that's real life. Sometimes it happens at the same time.
Yep.
And I remember I live in the country and I go on these walks and it's my best time with God. And I remember being like, okay, like I haven't even talked to her this summer. I haven't even seen her. She hasn't reached out. She hasn't initiated a single time. And she lives literally, 300 yards away.
Which can also be really hard,
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, is this something I need to bring up? Is this, because I'm very much about we as women really do need to ask for what we need, ask for what we want, not have these expectations that we don't verbalize in relationship. And so, but also the wisdom of God was like, okay, talk to me about this. And so I was processing with God for a few weeks about like, okay, I'm really disappointed because I need you and you're not available. And I remember God saying, like, you don't need to bring this up. Like, this is like, you don't need to bring this up. She's going through her thing. And what you need in friendship, I have given you in other places right now. And even though you wish this friend could meet you, I've given you other people. I've already given what you need in other community. And so you don't need to call her out. You don't need to address this. And it was such a sweet moment with God of him just saying like, hey, like you guys are going to be okay. I'm going to meet your relational needs with other people for a season. And then you guys will circle back. And even at the end of that year, Tracy ended up apologizing. And she's like, I know I really wasn't there for you. And I probably should have apologized, but I don't think I did. And, but it was just really cool. So I just think like there's so much to be had in just encountering God and talking to God about, even if we don't have a friend or we want a person, really going to him because he does care about these details of our lives. And I just think if we're feeling lonely in a season without friends or a desire for a deeper connection, like he deeply cares and sees us in these different stages and seasons. So yeah, I just really hope that encourages someone's heart because not everything needs to be addressed. And so when we take it
all
to
the time,
him, it was like, I hadn't even thought about how he was already meeting my needs in relationship. I was so discounting some of these other friendships or connections. And he just graciously reminded me like, I've given you what you need for right now. Cause I'm definitely a peopler. And so, so that was a really sweet, special moment for sure.
And that he's always with us. We are, even when we feel alone, think we're alone, like he's like, come to me first as your best friend. And then the people,
Absolutely.
with flesh and skin on them near us. Well, Courtney, I feel like I told you this story possibly when I was in your small group, but I'll share it with you, Tracy, and the listeners. So when my kids were little, we would all drop our kids off and drive about a half hour to meet a friend who is north of us, and we'd meet at the halfway point. And about maybe like 3 or 4 times a year, probably 3 times a year. But there was a Starbucks there, and we get there at like whatever, 9-ish or 9:30. And she knew friends who sold cabbie clothing. And so she kept all these samples in her trunk, and then she'd bring them into Starbucks, and we'd go in the bathrooms and try them on and buy them from her and just have a great time. You know, just, oh, the kids are in school and it's so fun to see our girlfriends. There were probably like 7 of us, I think. But next to Starbucks was the Cheesecake Factory. So as soon as the Cheesecake Factory would open at 11, we would put the things in our cars and then we'd walk over there as a group. And we had this waiter, and he knew which table we liked, and he just would put us back there. And we were basically back there from like 11 till 2 o'clock. He'd give us that whole table. And all of our husbands were in some form of ministry or some leadership position. And you had to be really careful who you talked with and who you shared with. And so the purpose of this cheesecake group was, let's give each person 20 minutes. And someone tried to be the timekeeper. And it was like answering the question, what's God doing that's amazing in your life right now? And what's he doing that's really hard? And then when the person would have that 20 minutes, we would ask them, like, do you want to hear a solution, or do you just want us to listen, or, you know, kind of what do you need from us? And then it always seemed like one person had the crisis going on, and the bulk of the time was spent on that for that individual. But through the years, that group became so important to each of us. Like all the storms that we went through, like you could just, if you thought of like, what are the potential storms out there? Like most people, like we pretty much covered most of them in that group, just with life happening. And one gal, amazing, like funniest person you've ever met and dearest person, we used to speak for MOPS, and she passed away of a brain tumor, glioblastoma, and she was like 42 or 43. She was in our group. But years later, we were at a wedding for one of the girls who was in that group. And, you know, we're listening to that girl's children speak, you know, with the microphone at the wedding, and how lovely the siblings all got along. But we also knew the backstory in those years as they were oil and water growing up. And one of the guys, the husbands at the table, he said, I just have to say, because we were all with spouses, you know, at one of these like table for 10 at a wedding. He's like, cheesecake group saved our marriage. And everyone raised their hand. They're like, saved our marriage too. Saved our marriage. Saved our marriage.
Wow.
I know. And,
wow.
But it was, why did it save our marriage? It saved our marriage because our husbands knew we had a safe place to process with women, and we weren't alone. And then we could be united with our husband in whatever it was we were going through. And we all just kind of grew together like through those years. And the other part that's been so cool is in those seasons when everybody had the little kids, you know, you felt like you were just focused on the kids, and whatever your career was or your gift mix that you loved to do before that was a little bit set on the back burner while you were focused on the kids. But then but you always saw the same characteristics in people, like the person who is really emotionally attuned became a marriage and family therapist. Actually, a couple of the girls did. And the person very involved in fitness is doing fitness now. And so it was so fun to watch those, like how people were designed never changed. And yet it just kind of became, it was like a lens that became more and more clear as the kids were launched and grown and flown. And now the woman has the time kind of to express and be that person. But those have been lifelong friends for me. And I can't imagine, you know, having gone through life without these women. And now they're a part of the wedding showers and the baby showers and just all the circles and transitions of life that I feel like we weren't meant to do life alone, and we are better together. You hear that phrase used a lot. But women's relationships can be messy and can be hard. And like you said, Courtney, it can be easy to just say, okay, I'm done, and close that door. I'm going to go over here and focus on another relationship maybe. And yet working through the conflict sometimes is so much more beneficial and talking, because nobody can read our mind and no one really knows, how we felt until we were able to have the humility to bring it up and address. And those are hard conversations, but usually you look back and you go, I'm so grateful that friend had the wisdom, maturity to have that conversation. And then your friendship reaches a new level of depth and intimacy and trust, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, life is so seasonal. And, as we talked about with the empty nesting, the grown and flown kids. And I think as believers, I saw this really neat post even this morning from Fred Smith, who is with The Gathering. And he just talked about how the Israelites always needed to pack up their tent and kind of move to the next thing. And God was always like a little bit keeping them on their toes. And it's like that, we can just never just like fully sit back and be like, okay, it's all the friendships, everything, the relationships with the kids, the spouse, it's just all good and perfect and done. No, it's like every day there's some new nuance and changing, but then we grow, and change as a result. So anything else you want to add? I know we're already at time to wrap up with our book we're reading, Bible verse bargain, but would love from both of you, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to encourage listeners, to be the initiator, to go first in friendship. I'm definitely the initiator between Tracy and I. And if I sit at home on a weekend pouting because she never asked me to go to dinner or lunch or whatever, then shame on me, because I know that one of my gifts is initiating. Uh-huh. And so I just think that women, there has to be somebody that goes first. So see somebody that you love their energy, you love their sparkle, you have something in common with, and really don't be afraid to take a step towards and initiate. My mom, she would always say, you have to be a friend to make a friend. And so if you're someone who's listening that really deeply desires friendship, talk to God about it. He will provide, and keep your eyes open to who might already be around you, and then initiate.
Yeah. And I think I would add to that too. Courtney actually gave me, I have it right here, a little painting 20 years ago, probably, that says books like friends should be few and well chosen. Samuel Peterson. And I think it took me a long time to realize it's not the quantity and in trying to fill, but finding who you connect with, kind of what Courtney was just saying. And even if you're in a new season where there isn't one around you, there are plenty of seasons where I have felt lonely as well. That, like Court said, find a place, you find interesting, or a play group or anything like that, that it's not about having a huge group you're vacationing with all the time. It's more about finding a couple really solid, or one to walk through life with, and be iron that sharpens iron.
Oh, well, thank you so much for both of you being here and sharing your story. And it's so beautiful to watch how you live in community as friends, but then you're also opening up to 20 women in every Revel group this ability to experience this depth of friendship. So that's why I wanted you on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
Yay, thanks for having us.
Yes. Well, why don't we go one at a time, and maybe Tracy, you start and go through your Bible verse, book you're reading, and bargain. Then we'll end with Courtney.
You bet. Okay. So the Bible verse I just chose my favorite life verse rather than, and it's Isaiah 61, familiar to all. I have a hard story. I have a really broken family background. So when I first heard this verse, it was a promise to me of beauty. So it's Isaiah 61, starting in verse 3. It was all verse 3. To all who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness, they will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his own glory. So that's my life verse. As far as what I'm reading, I just finished Jackie Hill Perry's Gay Girl, Good God. And I did it audio, and it is fantastic. Just the intimacy of the Lord and how he works through a story. Highly recommend that. And as far as a bargain, I laughed when that question because I'm actually not a shopper. I don't.
We
like
have
shopping.
half on the group who don't like bargains, and the other half are like, "Yes, I have a bargain."
So here's my bargain tip. Have a best friend named Courtney who sends you text messages when things go on sale and will look good on you.
There you go. That's great. I love it.
It is
okay,
true.
Courtney.
Mm-hmm. I do love shopping for her and sending her outfit ideas.
That's so great.
Thank goodness.
Yes. One of I would say my favorite psalm is Psalm 139, and so I was really prompted to memorize it this year. And if you're over midlife and you've tried to memorize a full chapter of scripture, it's challenging, but it is so awesome. And even though I'm only on like verse 8 of Psalm 139, it's just really doing something new in me, exciting, and I love it. So I would just encourage women to memorize scripture. I know we used to do it when we were kids, if you grew up in the church, but I love it. And it might take me this whole year to memorize Psalm 139, but I love it. I specifically love the verse, you hem me in behind and before. And when I use my imagination, give God access to my imagination, he gave me the words there, you enclose me in. Right. And so I think of that verse and I think about being sealed in an envelope, my life. And I just love how I'm closed in behind and before. And so that verse just really gets me. So I think enclosed is actually the Message version, Psalm 139. And then a book that I've loved this last year is it's called How to Stay Married, the Most Insane Love Story Ever Told by Harrison Scott Key. And it is phenomenal, heartbreaking, real, raw, a lot of faith incorporated, unpacking, understanding, asking hard questions of God in a true story. And so I would highly recommend it to all readers. Do the audio too. It's
never heard of that. Okay. And your bargain, besides giving Tracy links?
Okay, bargain is, I always say shop for the next season at the end of the season. So I love nothing more than like a J. Crew classic.
Yes.
And I'm buying it right now while everybody else is buying their resort wear. I'm buying my J. Crew classics on sale right now for next week.
Yes, the wool sweater when it's 80 degrees or 100 degrees out. Exactly. And then when it's the right weather, you're like, oh, I found that was such a good deal.
I fully expect some links this afternoon, Courtney.
Well, thank you both just for being so generous and being on this show. You live lives of generosity through your relationships and how you influence other women. And I love that we could have this conversation and really want to encourage any woman who's looking for a retreat to grow closer to God and closer to other women. Look up Revel. And just blessings on you both. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It was great.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.